Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
This is Sasha Christie, and you're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, the UK's biggest paranormal network. And this is Paranormal Dimensions with David Young.
Hello and welcome to the first show of 2020. Thank you for that intro, Sasha. Now it's been quite a year, and one that I've been in one way or another for me. I'll say I've been very lucky to have some amazing guests on this show over the past year, and as some of you know, especially the great friends I have, I had no idea or plan that I was going to do this show all this time. This time last year, I wasn't expecting to be doing it. So, but Irene Allen, who runs this station, she had faith in me, and she said, to do the show, and I thought we'd only last 2 or 3 shows, but anyway, I'm still here, so I've got some great shows planned for the new year, and I thought it would be a case of thank you, David, but I don't think we'll carry on with it, etc., etc. But here I still am. But anyway, I've got some good ideas for the next year or so. I'll be starting the next show. I'm going to have I'll probably have a guest presenter on the next show. I'm going to give that a go and see if it works out okay and see how that goes. It may not be on every show, but if I can arrange it, it will be. So watch this space. Actually, as some of you may know, I run the SPI East Anglia page on Facebook as well. Now, someone's just been in touch with me. He's actually in a quite a sensitive job. He's actually in the armed police. Now, he's been in touch with me. He doesn't want his name spoken, so I've got to keep his name a secret. But he's been giving me some UFO reports, and as I've said, he wants his name kept out of it. But I'm just going to read this report that he sent me. This was from August 2019, approximately 6:30 in the morning. He says, whilst leaving work after a night shift, I saw a bright orange glowing ball in the sky. It was clear. It was a clear summer's morning and no clouds about. It was near to the National Grid station of Sizewell Gap Road. At first I thought it was the moon, then realised it was far too small, close, and a total different colour. I then realised it could be the sun. I then realised it can't be the sun either, as it was going in the wrong place, and again far too small and too close. It didn't move, it just stayed there. Then I took my eyes off it to do something, looked back, and it was gone. I looked left and right and above, and there was no sight of it or anything else in the sky. It was a deep glowing orange colour, and around the size of a football from the distance I was viewing it from. It only appeared to be a quarter, perhaps half a mile from me. So that kind of brings back memories of me when I saw an orange object going across the night sky. Now, I've got some other reports from him, and I'll probably spill a few of those out over the next few shows. But I just wanted you to know that there's still quite a lot of activity in the East Anglia area anyway. And this is going to lead me on to my guest, my first guest for this year. His name's Dave Emmons, and he's actually an American, and actually he's had quite a exciting UFO experience himself. He's been on quite a few shows recently, so I'll introduce you now. Dave Emmons. Hello, Dave. How are you?
Hi, David. I'm doing fine, and thank you for the intro, and thank you for allowing me to be on your first show of the year.
Oh, you're very welcome, and a happy New Year to you.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you too, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, now, I've got to be honest, Dave, I don't know a lot about your case, so perhaps you'd like to tell us your story, and, you know, and we'll go on from there, perhaps, go into some more UFO experiences of other people's, maybe.
Right, yeah. Okay, I was just listening to the, to the orange balls that people have been seeing. I guess you better make sure that our president, our great president, Trump, might be sticking his head out the airplane window, and that might be the orange glare you see. So I just want to start off with that, but yeah. you notice I said our great president. So
yeah, sure. I mean, I know he's got his detractors over here. I mean, we're not going to go too far into politics on this show because it's a paranormal show, but he has got detractors over here, the same as our Boris Johnson has got detractors over here. But the way I see it, I think Trump's done quite a good job. I mean, I'm probably going to get a few people shouting at me, but
well, we kind of like Boris Johnson too coming in. So they both have great hair.
Yeah, they sure are a good match. That's right. I mean, I saw Boris on the television a little while ago, and his hair was all over the place.
Yeah,
I think he's got one of those types of haircuts you just can't do anything with, isn't it? It just goes everywhere.
Yeah, he's got this light hair. I think it's really fine light hair. Yeah. I have the same thing. It's not the balding, it's the lightness of the hair. Yeah. I've had that all my life, but yeah, the balding is getting a little bit too much on me. So, okay. I guess you want me to start with my very first experience?
Sure. Yeah, please, yeah.
Okay, back in 1963, most of the people that might be listening, wasn't even born at that time, but, I was 14, and I had a good buddy of mine we're still good buddies, and we still talk about this incident. This is the very first time. It might have not, as we go along, it might have not been something that just wasn't planned. It might have been planned through family DNA. But on this night, it was a kind of summer night. I think we were just out of school. And we were sitting on the steps. He lived in a basement apartment with his dad and uncle. And we were sitting there sipping on glass bottles of Pepsi Cola back then, and we had a 10 transistor radio. Well, we heard the radio start snapping and popping, and I looked at him. I said, "Did you change the batteries?" He said, "Yeah." And then we smelled this odor, in which it smelled like sulfur, in which later on to learn it's ozone. It's when carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrogen, and oxygen. When something comes in, the bottom of the craft or whatever gets hot, and it emits a smell of ozone or sulfur gas. So we smelled that, and then we looked up and we saw these two white lights. They weren't real bright. They were just shining, and we just I guess they might have been 6 inches wide lights or whatever. They weren't the big bright lights that you see on a lot of these craft, and which I've seen on craft later on, but. We thought, okay, we're going to go up on the road. We had to go up on the road from our steps, and he grabbed the flashlight from his dad's truck. So he started flashing the flashlight at this thing as it was moving over the neighborhood. It was almost treetop level. I'd say it was about 70 feet up. And we followed up the street, and then we got into this empty lot, in which this empty lot was right above my house and right next to my backyard. And it was just a little hill that you go down and get in my backyard. And this craft, like I said, was about 70 feet high, and it was about 30 feet wide, and about 12 feet thick or high. It might have been 14 feet. I couldn't really tell at the angle that I was standing. But we were both standing there looking at this thing, and we pinched each other, and we said, "Oh man, can you believe this? What is this?" And because we went to see all these horror movies back in the late 50s and early 60s on Martians and flying saucers. Destroying the earth. So we stood there, and that was kind of our fear, that what we saw in the movies, it might be happening to us. So we stood there and kept looking, and the bottom was dark. It was really dark, and that's probably what it come in real fast, probably. But then the top, it looked like an old top that you pumped with it looked like a little screw device that it would twist the top around. Well, it looked like that, a little bulgy, fat thing, about like me, but it had three kind of like rolls on it, And the first one, it was thick, about 6-7 feet thick, or maybe more. And then the second layer they had windows in it, portals. And I was looking at these portals, and I said to myself, I hope they don't look at us. I don't want to see what they look like. I told my buddy, I said, that would scare me, So I had a little fear in me just seeing these creatures. But what happened next was we said a few words to each other, and I made out a few words that we were talking about the craft, and I don't remember anything after that. The next thing I remember was looking to the west, and this craft took off real fast, right through the clouds, and it kind of left a little circle in the clouds as it went through so fast. But the object, when I drew it out, and a little later when I started drawing things out and looking at it, the craft was in the southwest, over my backyard. And when it took off, it was in the west, due west. And I checked that out, and I thought, okay, the craft moved, and we didn't see it move. So we have about an hour and a half missing time. This started about 10:30, and we didn't get into our houses until about midnight, because my mom was really mad. I told her, I said, I saw a UFO, Mom. She says, I'll UFO your butt and I'll get in the house. She said, you know how late it is? I said, it's not that late. She said, oh, yes, it is. And I never did get the time. So I didn't have a watch at that time. So I just went on to bed. But actually my mom said UFO my butt because she had experiences herself, but she didn't want to talk about it to us kids because she used to tell us, if a flying saucer lands, don't go close to it. Don't just run away.
Oh, really? So she was well aware of them then, yeah.
Yeah, she was. Her family has seen them in their backyard, and my mom has had some experiences with a tall, thin, dark character that would come into her bedroom, and I guess he would have his way. So that's what she's telling me. And she's 92 now, and she still tells those stories. And she didn't really open up on a lot of this until she saw that I had these experiences too. So she figured she'd start talking, and she would talk to me about them, but she doesn't like talking about it when other people are around, maybe a couple of brothers or whatever. And my older brother kept telling her, I said, why don't you talk to me about UFOs? I believe them. I seen them. And she just sat there and she didn't say much because she knew I was an experiencer, and so was she. And I even had a sister also that lived with her who had some experiences, but she would never tell us what was going on. So yes, this is a family thing. I've had a couple of the brothers who've seen the UFO craft. But getting back to this sighting, when this thing took off, is gone. And we looked at each other and said, wow, this is weird. And I said, yeah, it is, and then we just ran home but here, I usually have follow-up facts, David, when I have an incident, or when I see a UFO, or run into a strange person, what I do is I wait for a follow-up fact. Well, the follow-up fact, I didn't have to wait too long. It was about 3 weeks, maybe a month, at the latest. I had a lump in my testicle, and I looked down, and there was a hole that was maybe 3-inch long cut. It was a straight red mark. It wasn't opened or anything, but it's just a straight red mark. Wow. A thin line. And so I was actually pushing on this thing, and I took it and I pushed it back through that red line that was an incision, is what it was. So I pushed it out, and it looked like a little M&M, a small M&M, like oval shape, and it was whitish gray when I took it out, but as I held it, it was turning brown, and it was actually starting to deteriorate. Well, I showed my mom, and she said, well, that's probably an ingrown hair or a pimple. I said, this big, Mom? And she said, well, just throw it away. And I told her, I said, this is not what you think. I said, there was a hole already cut for it. And she said, what do you mean? I said, there was a red line that had a hole opening that I was able to get it back out of. And she just stood there and stared at me. She didn't say nothing. I think she was afraid that the UFO incident that I had 3 weeks or a month before was real. And so I guess it scared. She said, throw it away anyway. So I threw it away. I didn't keep it, but by this time it would have been dust anyway. So
yeah. It's a shame it did go though. But do you think that was an implant? It must have been an implant of some sort.
Yes, I did. I wouldn't have thought that way if it wasn't for the red line that was cut in my testicles. If it wasn't for that red line, I wouldn't have thought of an implant. It was obvious to me, and I thought myself, even at that age, I said, wow, now I'm connecting the dots, UFO, implant, and I told my buddy that, and I said, do you have any? And he felt around, he said, no, I don't have any. It's strange because my buddy, he went on through life, and he didn't really have any more experiences, but I did. I've had quite a few experiences, they seem to follow. Yeah, so...
I mean, that's a strange location that I've heard for the first time. I've heard of implants in arms and backs of necks and behind your ears and in the chest, but the first time I've heard of it in your testicles. Was it painful to be removed, or...?
It was just a little bit, when I pushed it out of the skin, it hurt when I pushed it through that cut line.
Yeah.
Just a little bit, but I don't know if it could be different. Maybe a lot of men don't even realize it. I think it's probably a good place to hide an implant, but the implant was definitely there to rearrange my DNA.
Yeah, because like you said, it could be for different purposes, couldn't they?
Right. Yeah, and this purpose, I'm sure that it was to reinforce my DNA, because years later, that a backup fact actually come about to support that idea that it was meant to reinforce my DNA and change it a little bit. They're tweaking us anyway, David. I mean, they're here, and 50% of the people that's been abducted, they don't realize they've been abducted. Dr. David Jacobs said that, and Dr. Mack had all these research items that they had. They talked to a lot of people.
Sure. Yeah.
And I had a chance to talk to Dr. Jacobs about my abductions, and he was forthright and told me, certain things, and I'll get to that pretty soon. But I had that when I was younger, at 14. Then I graduated from school, and my older brother, claims that it boosted my IQ. Because I went through high school, got on the honor roll, and I skipped school one day, and my big counselor told me, he says, I can't kick you out of school. I want to. He said, you don't do this. I said, well, I went to it with my friends, and he goes, you don't do this. And so I wanted to kick you out, but he said, you had too high of an IQ for me to kick you out. I said, wow. I said, well, then I never skipped school again. Because I figured I had a future or whatever. So I graduated from high school on honor roll, and I went to the military, and I qualified for anything I wanted in the military. So I chose nuclear weapons. So after I went through basic and waited for 6 months for a top secret, I went to Huntsville, Alabama, Redstone Arsenal, and that's where all the missiles and the technology at that time was at. So it's still there. They're still doing things there.
Yeah, I have been there actually, Huntsville.
You've been to the?
Yeah, I've not been on the base, but I have been to Huntsville, so I know what it's like there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was there in that class for 2 months. I couldn't stand it. A lot of people say, well, what happened to your top secret? Well, what happened was that I dropped out of the class after 2 months. I had an 89% average, and which was kind of a tough class, because most of the other guys in the class, there was only 14 or 15, and most of them had master's degree and bachelor's. Yeah. And I was the only high school guy, along with another guy. We were the only two high school guys in the class that qualified for it. So I didn't like it because of the military intelligence asking questions every weekend. They'd give you cigarettes. They'd talk to you for a couple hours. I was only 19, about ready to turn 20. And they said we was going to go out to Sandia. And I thought, well, we're going to go underground in Sandia. And I wanted out. So I had to go to the post chaplain to get out of that top secret class. And of course, after I got out of the class, apparently they must have dropped my top secret pretty quick. But that's what people's ask me about, whenever I have interviews, they ask me about that top secret. So I just wanted to explain it up front so people, so people wouldn't be questioning that. But, went to Vietnam, and I was a combat platoon sergeant, and then when I come back, they wanted to promote me to lieutenant and a field promotion, more or less, and I said, no, I just want to take my discharge and go. So that's what happened. So then after that, I got busy playing music. I'm a musician. I went to school. I worked as an electrician, and there for about 10, 12 years. Then I got other jobs in management, and finished my school. I've got about 5 years of college. I didn't go and pursue anything higher than that. I just had enough of school. So, but I was involved in journalism, as that was my major. So that's why I make notes and try to detail my events. I have about a 260 plus page ledger that I've got typed out. So hard copy and computer copy of all my strange events throughout my life.
So when you were in Vietnam, did you ever hear of any UFOs over there? Because I have heard of things being seen during the Vietnam War.
No, I didn't. A lot of times we were in a combat zone, and if you saw lights, they usually were flares or bullets coming in and out with tracer rounds. That I didn't really. I wasn't really that much alert on UFOs then. I was just watching and watching for the enemy and to come out of Vietnam alive.
Yeah, I don't envy you. It must have been awful over there. Yeah,
it was. So the weather and the mosquitoes and sleeping at night and being afraid that somebody's going to sneak in and cut your throat. So it was scary. And then we got into firefights. Yeah, it's all scary, and that's why I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to push my luck for a second second time around.
You must have seen some awful things over there, I would think.
Yeah, I did. And I've done things over there that I wasn't even trained to do, like call in artillery. I wasn't an artillery person. So the lieutenant ran. He got scared and ran, and I had to take over. So, yeah, things like that. You just have to, take your stand, and you got to be willing to fight. And that's why with this UFO subject, that same energy that I have, I want to confront this UFO and ET thing. I want to find out why were they touching base with me? Why were they doing the things that I did? But it's every question like that is like that from everybody. A lot of abductees, they say, why me? So and then we talk about the DNA thing, the family thing, and then we have the Native American Indian also bloodline that they supposedly they still check on. And in my background, my family has Crow Indian, so that could be part of my background and my blood that they're tracking. So who knows? They track also enlightened people. I guess those are people that believe and have an open mind to UFOs and ET. They can tell that. They can scan. They scan our frequencies. Each one of us have a different frequency. And I know I went from Illinois, I went up to Alaska for 2 years. My wife had a job up there, a contracted job. We went up there for 2 years, and I had some things happen up there that they let me know that they're still following me and they know where I'm at. So they know where you're at all times.
It's pretty desolate there, isn't it?
No, we were we're near the Army base there, in which she worked on, Fort Wainwright in Fairbanks, and so it wasn't desolate right there, but it didn't take you long to get out of town and get into the wilderness. That's and the cops up there, they tell you, they said, if you don't have a gun, you're crazy. And I called them, I said, can I have a gun here in Alaska? And they said, you got one now? I said, no. They said, you better get one, you fool. So, about bears and all that other stuff, critters. But that's another place where there's a lot of people that are missing, David. When I was there was one case that I kind of followed a little bit. We drove past the motel where this guy, he come in, I think he come in from Kansas, or Oklahoma, somewhere like that, and he was dressed really nice, and he come in with a couple of bags, And the maid said that he went in the room and left his bags there. And the next morning he was gone. He vanished.
Oh.
So we know that the police looked for him. They tried to find him. He left his wallet and everything there. So apparently he knew where he was going or what was going to happen to him. But a lot of people vanish in the Klondike up there in Canada. There's a lot of native Canadian Indians that are abducted, and they're gone. They disappear. It's just the women. It's not the men mostly, but the women that disappear. So, and here in the States, of course, we have thousands of people disappear. We don't know.
Yeah. In fact, that came up on a show the other day. One of the previous shows I did at the end of last year about thousands of people go missing, and that's all over the world, not just in the States, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of them missing here. And of course, we got this human trafficking and the sex trafficking going on, and that's how a lot of them probably disappear. But who knows how many disappear by ETs and UFO? We don't know that. We don't know if that's what happens to them.
Well, as I say, some would say that's linked anyway, isn't it, to the Illuminati and the controlling race behind the scenes.
Right, and that fascinates me, David. Those secret societies, going all the way back to the Knights Templar, and the mysteriousness they had with the Solomon's treasure and the Ark of the Covenant. Supposedly they had it. Watching the show here, I don't know if you noticed, is Oak Island where they're digging for this treasure, and it's been quite an ordeal. Whatever they did, they had tunnels. And when you got down to certain levels, water would rush in and flood you out.
Right.
And this is really technology. If you take a look at that show, it's really a technology that I think the Knights Templar had when they come over here in the 1300s, somewhere like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, these secret organizations, they know things. Some groups know things. Some groups just follow, there's 2 or 3 people who might know something in the group, and then the rest of them follow. But yeah, we have that shadow government and the black operations that goes on with ETs, UFOs, and what they're doing is helping out with technology. And then of course we give them something we don't know. I guess the freedom to go and do cattle mutilations and do their experiments. And do their experiments on us. So after about, I guess, 20 years after that experience, this was probably longer than that. It was in 1996. I saw lights in the skies, and I looked at them, and I thought, that could be strange, because once you see one, you're always looking up.
Yeah.
I see these lights, and they're flying over, sometimes going very fast. But that's all I noticed when I was really busy. Matter of fact, I was so tired. I played music and worked and went to school that I was so tired when I went to bed. If they would have abducted me, I wouldn't have known it. So I don't know. But the first real incident that happened after that was 1996. I was in Godfrey, Illinois, and I was in bed. It was around 1:30, close to 2 o'clock, and my daughter, which she's an adopted daughter, she was coming in our room to go into the master bathroom. Well, that's where we kept the aspirins and Tylenol. And I thought it was her going in after Tylenol because she had headaches a lot. So I thought it was her. I got up on my elbow and I called her name out several times and no answer. I saw the dark shadow come around the end of my bed. And the wife had like sheets over the windows because she didn't want no light in. She has to sleep in complete darkness. So this added to, I guess, the mystery. But this thing walked around, and I looked at it, and I got on the other elbow, and I was looking at it, and it looked at me, and I felt fear for about 5-6 seconds, and then I went out. This thing was about 3.5 feet tall. It was kind of gray-green in the room, the way it's come off. But it didn't have the black lenses on its eyes. It just had huge eyes. I could see the pupils. It looked like our eyes, but a little bit bigger. And it was very wrinkled. Not like the commercial grays that you see on TV or toys. This thing was so wrinkled. I mean, really wrinkled. Like it might have been old. I don't know. But when it looked at me, I had fear. I went out, and then apparently I got up about an hour later or whatever, and my eyes were batting, flashing like a nervous tick. And I said, oh my God, what happened? I went to the bathroom, kind of washed my face, threw some cold water on my eyes, and I wondered what the heck just happened. And I asked my wife, my ex-wife, that I said, did you see anything or hear anything? She goes, no, go to bed. So what they do a lot of times, if they're going to just take one person or do something to a person, they usually dumb down or knock out people around you. If you're the target, then they're gonna put the other person to sleep with that magnetic energy, in which is dumbing down, I call it. And they have different doses, just like they have for anesthetics. Magnetic energy, they have a little. I thought I saw the device one time with a couple of creepy guys at a convention, and I even got Linda Moulton Hall's attention with the pictures that I took. And these items look like little black flashlights. Apparently, they can turn them on and create some kind of magnetic energy around you, where you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do, you're just frozen. So I think what happened that night is that they took semen from me, and I saw in later, I guess regressions you would call them, in a deep sleep regression, I saw that tube heading towards my groin a couple of different times in my lifetime, and I even seen the color of the tube. It was a tan tube, went to my groin area, and I tried to kick it away, and then apparently I went back out again. Once they don't want you to disturb what they're doing. So what they do is they extract the semen, and then they implant it for hybrids, or who knows what else they do. But I know that's happened to me a couple of times. I've seen that tube. And actually one time, at the same Godfrey house, I saw, it was my friend. They mask, they get into your brain, they can read your brain, they can pull it out, they can find voices, they can mask the face of a friend. And this friend had my knee in the air, and then he was working in between my legs, and I looked up and I pushed back a little bit, but then I went out because, I wasn't so afraid because I saw the face of my friend. And I said, this can't be. What can this be? They mask. They're also invisible. ETs can be invisible. They can move about your house.
I suppose they go on a different vibration plane or something, can they? That's probably how they do it. Yeah. Yes.
I actually was involved in that in another regressed dream, in which I got scientific friends of mine I talk to about these things, and they tell me that it doesn't sound like a dream, it sounds like a regression, because in a regression, when you go through everything, it's almost like you're there. You actually can communicate and relate. But this certain time, I remember being led through the living room to my metal insulated door. And so I was supposed to go through it. I knew what they were saying. I looked around it, I couldn't see nothing. So it says, go through the door. And so I said, no, I don't want to hurt my head. So I put my hand through the door and about my arm halfway up. And I looked around, and you're kind of out of your mind. You say, hey, has anybody taken a picture of this? I thought to myself when I was saying it. And it's kind of like you're delirious because you got this magnetic energy that is hitting you. And yes, I felt hot. I felt flushed. I felt like I was nauseous. I felt like I was weak. And as I held the arm in that door, it was getting hotter and hotter. And I thought I better go through the door because I don't want to get burnt. So I went through the door, and then after I got out on the porch, I don't remember anything after that.
Yeah. That's quite a weird story. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, that's I talked to a science friend of mine, and he said if you didn't talk about your feelings, how it felt, the heat and the nauseous, he said that all tells me that your frequencies were raised so you can get through that door.
I suppose it makes sense, because I think a lot of this stuff is interdimensional. It doesn't have to be extraterrestrial, does it? I think some of these beings that are interdimensional, and I think they do actually move on a different vibration plane, like we said, and obviously that's what they were doing with you, to make you pass through that door. That's all I can put it down to. So have you had several experiences like that?
You've had several?
No, have you had several experiences like that, or?
Oh yeah. I saw 5 up close UFOs that we don't get time to get to them, but and they always tell you when you see a UFO up close, they're tagging you, literally tagging you. You know, they're putting an implant on you. And I had another implant in my leg, my left calf leg that I dug out, and it was kind of charcoal looking. You might have seen some implants.
Yeah, I've seen
this thing was about.
Photos, but yeah.
Yeah. I got a lot of photos of this one, and it was kind of 3/8 of an inch long, looked like a little piece of charcoal-like. I put it in a plastic bag to try to save it, and I made a mistake by giving it to somebody that has a camera shop. I said, could you get me some really microscopic shots of this? And he said, we'll try. Well, his shots weren't any better than I finally took my camcorder, a Sony camcorder, and I actually stuck it on the lens of the microscope. And I got good shots with that, believe it or not. It really, you can take a camcorder, put it up to a microscope, and you can actually take pictures of it. I wouldn't take video, but I'd take, just snap the picture. And I got quite a few of those, on my photo album. But this thing, I took it out, and again, there was a little red round hole in my leg. And I thought, where did that come from? It was kind of like you take a nail and puncture your leg, except you bleed with that, and at times it turns into a scab. But there's no scab, just a round red hole. So whatever they do, it leaves a little red mark or some kind of a line cut, and it's so precise, and you don't bleed. The object that they put into you, you don't have a reaction to it. Some kind of allergic reaction or whatever. They know what they're putting into you. So this was a little carbon chunk they put into me, and it looked like when it first started melting, I took some. I couldn't get the pictures of it then, but then I finally did. But they looked like brain neurons. They were coming off of it, and of course the scientists say that the heart has brain neurons in it. So it actually thinks with your brain. So actually, when you feel things from the heart, you really are. I mean, you're getting the gut reaction. But yeah, that's what this thing looked like. And I couldn't tell when that happened. In 2001, I will move up another 10 years. I got busy. I had a business, and I was so busy and so tired that sometimes that's when people get abducted. They don't know it. But during those times in 2001, I was a supervisor at a refinery. I did all the jobs, and I was kind of looking around the equipment. That's my responsibility. And I was looking around all the equipment, and everything was quiet, and everything was just dead. And I thought, oh, no, the unit is down. And when a unit goes down in a gasoline refinery, that's trouble. And you have to really run and just really it's chaos. So I ran into the control room, and it was all out. The lights were all out. There was nobody in the control room. And this was actually a very regressed, vivid dream that I had from this UFO, or if you could call it a UFO. I was up on the 14th deck of this vessel, and this is where I got this dream. I'm telling you about the dream now that the plant shut down, and I told the other guys, and they didn't believe me. But this is where the dream was implanted. And they can implant and extract information from you just by being close to you or near to you. I was about 140 feet up on this vessel. It had walkways, and I saw this silver thing coming my way. It looked like a glider, and it was only about, I'd say, 100 feet off the ground. But a glider would not be in a refinery area because that's restricted area. No airplanes or nobody can fly across it except EPA and those government officials who are licensed to do so. But this craft approached me really slow, and I looked at it, and it come to me in more fuller vision as it was approaching me, and it was all silver color, metal, I guess, metallic, and it had no cockpit. It had no devices on the outside of it. It was like it had two short wings, and it had one tail rudder wing. And I couldn't figure that out. I said, well, a glider couldn't fly just with that type of, type of a craft that was built like that. It just could not fly. So it kept approaching me, and I called down the control room and I said, hey guys, there's something weird here. You guys should come up and take a look. And they said, oh no, it's Dave and those UFOs again. they always, yeah. I guess you've probably gotten that yourself, Dave.
Well, yeah, somewhat.
Yeah, but it's comical in ways. I try to make a joke about it. As long as they don't call me crazy, my buddies at work didn't call me crazy. Because they knew in their heart of hearts that something else exists out there, because these were pretty intelligent guys and that I work with in this group. But I saw this thing approaching, and I thought, what is going on? And I was just mesmerized by looking at it, like I have my other craft that I've seen. And it come up close to me, and I looked for a cockpit. I looked for some signs of an antenna. I looked for signs of anything that protrudes from it, but it was just clean, slick. And it flew by me, and then it went due south. It come from the east and then it went due south, and it was going real slow. And I couldn't imagine what that was, and so I know it's a UFO. And to follow up with that dream I just told you about, that's what they give me. They downloaded to me. They threw bone to me, I guess. They said, okay, we'll give this guy something to think about, because we showed ourselves to him again. So that's where that all come from, the dream and the contact with this device. And so that means they know the future. They can speed ahead in the future, and they can go in your past. They go in your past by going into your brain and pulling out certain things that, voices of people. They can actually extract that. I've had voices a couple of times when I was being abducted. I've heard voices of dead past people that I've known. But that was the amazing thing to me, that they do know future. And I had somebody I talked to here a while back, and they said, well, normally they don't jump in future, but I'm sorry to say there was a couple of times where I did jump 30 or 40 minutes ahead of schedule for some strange reason, and it was just weird.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I went to the VA there, and they was testing me for different things. Of course, I'm a Vietnam veteran, so they do test on us every once in a while. I went there for testing, and I got to the travel area where they bus you over or shuttle you over to another department, the dermatologist. And I got there and I told the lady, I said, oh my, I'm 15 minutes late. And we looked at our clocks, and I looked at my watch. She said, yeah, you're 15 minutes late. You're not going to make that appointment. And she said, this shuttle just took off about 30 minutes ago. So I got in. I stood there by the door waiting for a shuttle, and the shuttle just pulled up as I was just walking out. And I walked on, I was all by myself, and this guy took me over to where I was supposed to go. I got in the appointment, and this was 1:45, their clock said. And I was wondering what's going on here. Very weird, like a time slip, something that's just not right. And I knew the time because the lady also verified the time with me when I left that central office area. But when I was in there, I usually catch strange people. You get somewhat of a third eye, when you get around ETs, you get implants. They give you a gift. My body's full of electricity, and I'll get to that story here real shortly, but it's like, you know that when they download to you and upload, you know what they're giving you it's for their use. It's not for yours, actually. So that's where all that is at. But I just feel that, they do have that kind of control. And yes, it is a little scary, but you kind of go with it. And if you learn how to listen to them and hear their telepathic signals to you, you actually do what they want you to do. And a lot of times they'll tell you to go somewhere. That's happened twice to me. They tell you to go somewhere, and it's in your mind. You got to go. You don't feel like going, but you go. And then what happens? You have these sightings, or you have something weird that happens, and so that's why a lot of times if I'm told to go somewhere, and I know I'm supposed to go, I go because twice I've had UFO sightings and plus weird things that happen to me.
That's an interesting story.
Yeah, the time thing is, I've had a talk with, like I said, with somebody a while back, and they said that they didn't know that they jumped time. I said, yeah, how can they give you these vivid dreams about the future and what's going to happen? So, and I've been in my car a couple of times, and not only like at the VA, but I've been in my car a couple of times where there was the third UFO I saw was when I went to Springfield, and I had some musician buddies playing there in Springfield, Illinois. That's the capital of Illinois. And I thought I didn't want to go. I was really tired, and I thought to myself, well, I felt like this before, so I'm just going to go, so because I had a dream about going there and watching these guys setting up on stage with their band equipment. And I knew that the lady of the group, she was the lead singer, and I kind of knew her. Well, I didn't I went to meetings with them and stuff like this, UFO and paranormal meetings. So I knew her quite well, and we sat down and I had a drink, and I was telling her, I said, I've been here. I said, I looked at the stage, and this guy was putting things together, and I said, I saw a tall, dark shadow in the corner of your bandstand. And she was the type, she was a ghost hunter, she was into the paranormal. And she told me, she said, you saw this, Dave? I said, yes. I said, and I'm going to ask you a personal question. I said, you went to the bathroom to go pee. She said, yeah. How'd you know that? I said, well, that's what it told me in the dream, that you were supposed to do that, and that while I was with you. And that was, it sounds corny. It sounds weird, but it just happened that way. So what happened was it was getting late, and I figured I better get out of town, and I've had a few drinks, and I didn't want to drink anymore because of the laws. So I went outside, got into my car, and curious enough, there was 2 cars over. There was a young lady, she was blonde, short hair, and she jumped in her car, and she was running for something in the console. And I looked at her, and I thought, this is weird, and she looked dead at me, and I thought, okay, I don't know what she's up to, but I just left. So when I went through town, there's a lot of stoplights, and I had a couple of friends tell me that no, you cannot get through town that quick. And so these stoplights looked like I was going in a dream, like 1, 2, 3, 4, all these, I was just going through them and stopping, going through, stopping. It was real fast. I ended up at the end of the south end of town where I was heading back home. And I went to get something to drink at McDonald's, and I went to the restroom, got in my car, and took off. And I thought I wouldn't get home till about 1:30 that morning, but I got home about 1 o'clock that morning. So it's actually about 35 minutes ahead of time, 40 minutes. But what the fact that preceded that time jump was I was on the highway 55 heading south, and coming from the northern direction on the side of the road was a bright light. It looked like a tic-tac, just like they talk about. It's elongated, and it's elongated light, and I thought it was a helicopter, traffic helicopter. It was about 11:30 at night, and I thought, okay, it's a traffic copter, so I kept watching, and then I thought it was kind of strange. It was slowing down a little bit, and I kept going, so I slowed down on my car, and I noticed something, I felt something weird. I felt some kind of energy like I felt before, and I know what that feels like. So I slowed down, and I looked over at this thing, and it just took a turn. It come right over my car, and I looked up underneath of it, out of the window, and I saw it was a round saucer. It had like 4 cutout pie-like cuts, and in the center was it was a black center to it. And I looked at that flying over me, and I watched it go away from the other side, and I said, oh my, why? There's about 7 cars there in that same area heading north and heading south, but they crossed right over me. And I thought, why did they do that? It was kind of like showing me, okay, we were in control tonight, and we know what's going on with you. And so after that, I said, this is weird. The whole thing is weird. I drove home, and when I got home, like I said, I was 35 minutes earlier. I shouldn't have been home till 1:30. I was home before 1 o'clock. So somehow or another, I got sped up in time. And I was with a spiritual group in St. Louis. That's right across the river from me in Mississippi. And I was with her one time, took her to a spiritual meeting. And I was just curious. I'd never been to one of them. So when I left her house and to go to this place, she told me where to go. We got there. She said it took her about 15 minutes to get to that location when she usually travels it a lot. And she looked at her watch and she said, it only took you 8 or 9 minutes. And she said, you didn't speed. I said, no, I didn't speed. I didn't take no shortcuts. And she looks at me kind of weird. And she knew me. This gal knew me. She said, David, you might be an ET. And I said, and so that kind of chilled me because she's pretty much into all that stuff. She knows the spiritual side of it. So that was another time that I felt a little race of time, and people, were witnessing it. And, of course, the Springfield thing, they don't want to come back. I had other friends tell me, yeah, there's no way you can make it out of town with all those stoplights and get back to your house, 35 minutes earlier. And they said that UFO that went right over your car was a signal to you. They come right over me. So when they come over a person, you are the designated person of interest.
Right. So there was no sign anyone else saw that craft then? It was just you?
I'm not sure, David. I think if I would have checked around, I think, I know there's a van that was right behind me and somebody was in front of me. Now the person in front of me may have not seen it, but there was a van and another vehicle right in behind me. And I'm sure they might have seen it, but it would be hard to track them down.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder if they just become visible to certain people sometimes too.
Yeah, that's a theory too, that people that are open-minded, that have the third eye, they've been charged, with an implant or electrically charged or whatever. But that was my third sighting. So as time goes on, I got busy in 2005. I had my own business and everything. So it seemed like when I get real busy and I don't sleep much, I don't get any activity that I know of. You could be dead asleep and they can be coming in on you and doing what they want, or, tractor beam you out for a little while and set you back down. There's also theories that they just beam up your consciousness and your soul, and they don't mess with our souls, is what I've been told. There's a lot of theories on that too, that the soul is something they don't mess with. What they work with is our vessel. They call it our body. And we talk about a lot of that in the Bible, being your vessel, and then the soul lives in that vessel. Yeah. So they can separate them. They can separate your consciousness, your soul, and any body electronics. That's what they actually can record the electronics in your body that run your brain, and your brain is a computer, and that's what they tap into to find out who you are and your past. It's kind of scary to even talk about it, that you don't own your own thoughts, and you don't. It's getting that way now with the government. The government can tap into us and find out everything about us.
Yeah, that's a scary thing, that people could just tap into you at any time they like.
Yeah, and the government has the electronic devices that are doing that, and they know a lot of our moves. If you take a look at a product online, and if you're on Facebook, apparently that product keeps flashing up on your Facebook page, and they know when you've looked at it. It's incredible what they know now. And, of course, who's ever listening to this conversation, they are usually recording it or they're interested in it. I saw it somewhere in a UFO page in the Facebook that, one person who I feel is very credible, she said that, every time you put a posting in UFO, pages, or if you have interviews, whatever, there's people who know exactly what you're doing.
Oh, right. I'm in trouble then.
Yeah. Have you ever had any problem with that, David?
Not yet, no. not that I know of. But,
yeah, we don't know. A lot of times, I believe early on back in 2011, I was hacked, and I really believe in the person who fixed my computer. He was a hacker qualified, so that makes him he's a good computer tech, and he worked with the police. And he went through my computer, and he told me, he said, you were hacked by not your typical college kid or somebody off the street that just walked in and hacked your computer. He said a professional did this hacking to your computer.
Oh, right. I have had a couple of times, someone's tried to break into my account, and put a false password in or something, and Facebook have got in touch with me to tell me, did you try to change your password? And of course I've said no and reported it, but whether that's connected to what you're talking about, I don't know.
No, because the people who are doing this, black operations, I don't want to mention any alphabets here, but I'll say NSA, CIA, or even FBI, they follow this UFO phenomena, and they used to watch more closely, I'd say, as of 20 years ago, but the last 10 years, it seems like there's not been that many threats to people. There hasn't been anything that, they might be still following up to find out exactly what we do know. But I think what happens is they're letting up a little bit. There's a little bit more freedom in talking about the UFO thing.
Well, there's too many people talking about it, really, isn't there, Dave?
Right, yeah. I had a guy, and it was a strange experience, and this guy was Alaskan when I was up there for 2 years, my wife. This guy, I got a hold of him, and he was a part of MUFON. MUFON director, and he also made documentaries for the History Channel and for Discovery Channel. If you heard about those U.S. channels on TV.
We've got them here.
Yeah, and he does a lot of documentaries with him, and he talked to me for an hour at length about my sightings and everything, and he said you can talk about abductions. He actually works for the government. He's worked in the sociology area or something with the humanities, and he was in charge, I guess, he was dealing with people or civilians outside the military and trying to, make a connection with the two. So he told me not ever discuss what the craft looked like underneath the body of it or whatever. He said that's what keys the military. Oh. And I said, oh, really? And he said, yes. He said, don't do it. So this guy was a pro documentary person, and he worked with the government. So he knows. He's a paleontologist, I believe that's what he said he was with the government, and he had a couple other titles. But he was very, I guess, into the game of things, and he warned me not to talk about how the craft looked, any strange anomalies of the craft or whatever. So I don't think the things that I saw exterior wise. I've seen some things on the inside. In a very vivid regressed dream of some of my abductions, but I've never seen, the technology, I wish I knew more about it. I did see a couple of things with technology, but, we'll go on through 2005, we'll go on, and I come to 2009, and that's where things, I don't know why, but things just seem like they happened. I seen, the orbs in the sky and that type of thing close to me, and I thought, are they going to come towards me or not, or just pass by? Most of them passed by. I didn't have any close-up drive-bys on a lot of those. But it gets to the point where things started kind of like, I don't know if it's spiritual or is it conscientious or whatever, but I went to she was a spiritual reader, and she was half Native American, and she was carrying on the traditions. And my buddy who writes ghost books, Larry Wilson, and he's in his 5th book, and I'm going to interview him when he gets done with that next month. But he knows quite a bit about things, and he's one of the guys who called me Steven Spielberg, with all the events and experiences that I've had. He said I can probably write a movie on this stuff. I said, well, probably so. But I haven't gotten into that part of it. I've got a rough draft of 270 pages of a ledger that I could write a couple of books out of, but I haven't done it yet. But I might in the near future.
Yeah, I think you should. I think I mentioned that before. I think you should do.
Yeah, I was with, I went to her house, as Larry told me. She lived back in, it's a wooded area. She lives on a hill, and as I drove up to her house, I've never seen anything like this. There's about 200 or 300, dragonflies that flew across my windshield of my car and went across me. And I thought, is this a sign? What is this? Is this a spiritual sign? So when I got to her, we sat down and she started thinking about things. She said, you're going to have your car damaged, but you'll be able to make your trip or finish your trip. She said, you are taking a trip, right? I said, yeah, in about 9 days. And she said, well, when you take your trip, she said, you'll have car damage, but you'll be able to make it. The third thing she told me, she said, you're going to meet your first ET. I looked at her and kind of chuckled, and she looked at me and she said, no, I'm serious. You're going to meet your first ET on October 4th. And she said, where were you you're going to be that? I said, Sedona. She goes, that's where you're going to meet this person. I said, you know who it is or what? She goes, no. I was just told from my guides that you will meet that person. So those were the two that I took away from the 4 comments she made. The first comment was about my back. I'll give her that because, if you're walking a little slumped in your back, people are going to notice that you have some kind of back injury or whatever, but I'll give that to her. Okay. But she hit those right on the nose. And then as, 2010 October, I took off for Sedona. And after I got there, I rested a little bit and cleaned up. And then I went to a shop there in Sedona. And the women there told me that there was a UFO sighting there. It's Cathedral Rock, and it's where there's an actual cathedral built in the side. You might have heard about it.
I've been to Sedona, Dave. It's a beautiful town. Yeah. Yeah, where they've got the drums in the streets and everything, where you can tap them. It's a lovely town. Yeah,
it's got some energy there that some people can pick up on, depending on their third eye strength. But as I went to the Cathedral Rock, it was kind of cloudy, and I got out of my car, started filming, and I thought maybe, I'll catch a UFO. And then here comes in behind me a little white car, and out pops this Japanese lady, she's in her early 30s, maybe somewhere in there. And, she's about 5'4", and, real light built, and she had denims on, and she had some kind of a tank top with a sweater, a real light sweater over that. No earrings, no makeup, no purse, no cell phone. I didn't have any of that stuff.
That's unusual for nowadays.
Yes, it is. And it's very unusual for the Japanese culture because usually, they'll have a watch and a camera on just about at all times. They take a lot of pictures. So she didn't fit that mold right away. I kind of felt, and I asked her, I said, are you here to, hike? She goes, no. Are you waiting? I said, are you waiting for people? She goes, no. And I said, it might rain pretty soon. And then she told me, she said, we were supposed to meet. And I said, we were supposed to meet? I said, oh, well, that's kind of strange. And so we got in the car and we started talking, and up pulls the a driver that pulled over a lot over from me, a parking space over from me. And he was a guy in his mid-20s or whatever, and he had short cropped hair, and he had a headset on. And it's very curious because he never looked over. He wasn't looking around at all. And I thought, this is crazy, and I looked at her and I said, do you know him? She goes, no. But he pulled out, and then I started talking to her, and she started asking me questions. And one of the things that I've learned through the books that I've read, They Walk Amongst Us, and Dr. David Jacobs and John Mack, they have a lot of information out, and they talk about these hybrids. And they go around to people and they try to pull out their emotions so they can find out how to act as a human, because they don't have emotions like we do. In order to work within our society and move around in it, they have to know how we respond, how we react in social areas and groups. So they try to elicit these social comments or emotions. And then she said, I had a friend at work that I can't get along with. She's always, arguing with me. I said, well, you need to work it out. I said, if you can't work it out, then keep your distance, since there's a professional working environment. You don't want to lose your job over it. So you just have peace. And then she started whimpering and crying. It was a fake cry. And I thought to myself, hold on, this doesn't look right, doesn't sound right. She's talking about her parents and her family. She was kind of crying. I put my hand on top of hers to see if I can comfort her, and her hand was very hot. I mean, it was above fever pitch, and I pulled it away. And I said, are you okay, Hiroko? She goes, yes, fine. And I said, you are burning hot. I said, what's wrong with you? And it could have been her frequencies that made her hot like that. I went through something like that. I'm going to get to that shortly, but it seemed like it was her frequencies that were doing that made her speed up. I was talking to Daryl Sims, and he told me he said that he thinks that she was just learning to mix among humans, and she was trying to learn emotions, and she was still an amateur at it. That's what Daryl Sims told me, and I sent him pictures and the story and everything. So, but it was an unusual evening, and then we parted ways. She went where she stayed, and I went where I stayed. And the next day we met for breakfast, and she was there, and she had dirt, mud like splattered on her pants. She had that on the night before. Most young ladies are very particular about how they dress and how they look. And here she was with the dirt and the mud splattered on her pants, and it was the same way she looked the night before. And I kept thinking, she's not the usual typical young lady. Yeah. So we went to the breakfast thing, and then we went out traveling around, and then the other buttes and everything. She didn't say much. When I asked her how old she was, she come on point, and she says that there is no years, there is no age. We have no age. I said, I have age. I said, I don't know. And then she just gave me she had dark eyes and piercing. And when she looked at you, you just kind of knew, okay, just follow the storyline that she wants you to follow. Don't grab a camera, don't get all excited. But she did like me taking pictures of her and I together. And she wanted those pictures. She left me some, I guess, Dropbox type of email address in which nobody could locate. My friend's an investigator. He tried to locate it and couldn't find it. But I sent her the pictures, and she's very happy about that. Why she wanted the pictures, this might come up in the second fact, in which I usually wait for in any of my events. 6 months later, let's travel 6 months ahead, in 2011, April 9th. This was March 17th, I'm sorry. April 9th is when the big triangle I saw. This April March 17th, I'm sorry, St. Patrick's Day. Very sunny, very nice here in Illinois, about 74, 75 degrees. So my cousin and I set out on our porch, and she stayed down the road. The two young Japanese young gentlemen come up to us on the porch. And the only question he asked us, where is the new Walmart? And I told him where it was at. And then we sat there and we both dumbed down. And my cousin has noted to spit out 1,000 words in a minute when he meets somebody. He talks to them and asks them questions. He didn't say a word. I looked over at him like I was in a daze myself. I couldn't ask him if that was Hiroko down the road. And I know it was because it's the way she stood, the way she folded her arms, and she still had this white sweater on that she wore even in the Sedona. They just stood there, and it was kind of weird. And I know the one went in and out of my house to pick up this little portfolio I had with my UFO notes, and he kind of thumbed through them and he looked at me while he was doing it in the front yard. I didn't realize that what he had until maybe 2 or 3 months later. It all come to me that was my attaché case, because he didn't have one walking up. And he looked through my notes, and he must have put it back, and he walked right by me and went in my house twice without me even realizing it. So I was really dumbed down. And they walked away, and they met up with the lady, and my cousin kind of start coming to. He says, "What's going on?" And he looks out and he sees these three, walking. He says, "When did you start seeing them?" I said, "As soon as they crossed the road right here," and then they headed to, I guess, hook up with Hiroko. I told him. He said, "Who is Hiroko?" And I said, "The gal I met in Sedona, the ET." And he was pale white as a ghost. He couldn't understand what was going on. These three got together at the stop sign right there at the highway, and they just disappeared. And he asked me, cousin asked me, "Where'd they go?" And I said, "Well, they didn't go down the road. They didn't go up the road. They're gone."
Wow.
And he said, "This is weird." He was pale white. He got up. He was actually kind of mad at me because I was attracting this ET thing, and he didn't want to be involved in it because he's scared. A lot of people are afraid of this type of thing, of paranormal stuff. So he got in his truck and he left. So I talked to his wife the next day, and she said, "What happened to him, David?" I said, "Well," I told her about the ETs, and she doesn't really believe in them, but I told her that's what happened. And she said, "Well, whatever happened, he just can't get over it. He was still, mind boggled." I said, "Well, yeah, it happens to me too." So that was that one there. But, in moving on about, the big triangle craft I saw, I may have not mentioned that in the first part of our interview. This was the the fifth UFO I saw. I saw another one, I guess just a little bit after that too, but I saw this huge triangle, and there was two big bright lights about a half a mile from me heading my way, and I can see them through the tree tops, and this thing was heading my way, and there was two big lights on the back corners of the triangle. And in the front, as they got closer, they clipped the tree across the street from me, some other lady's house and her tree. And that's how low they were flying. And I heard a hissing and buzzing sound. And what happened was that it flew right again. This craft flew right over me. The center of the body was right directly over me. And I was so lucky that I had my mom and two brothers that live 4 houses down. They told me they saw it too. And my mom was afraid to come out on the porch and look at it because she was afraid of being abducted. And so she knows quite a bit about UFOs because her past, she's had some weird things happen to her in her past, and she's just been coming out the last few years and telling us about what went on with her and in the past. But I saw this craft, and underneath of it, I'll tell you what it looked like. There was a groove, like right down the center of it, and it was dark, kind of gray metal. Of course, it was kind of cloudy, so it's not going to show the full luster of the metal. It was kind of dark gray metal, and in the center was a big, looked like a some kind of a vent. It looked like it had slats in it or whatever. It was about 30 feet in diameter. And that lights up red. From what I see in a lot of other videos I've seen these triangles with the 3 lights and the center like being lit up like red. Well, that red is the propulsion area apparently, and this is the venting system. That's what was making a hissing, buzzing sound when it flew over me. And then I looked up front of it when it first started coming over me. There was 2 big globes. They looked like glass globes hanging down in front of this craft. I couldn't figure that out because nobody's ever told me about a triangle having those types of bulbs, big glass bulbs. They're about 15 feet long and about 5 feet wide, and there's 2 of them back to back.
They're pretty big, don't they?
Yeah, and I tried to figure out, and I've asked people who know about triangles, and they don't even want to talk about that. And I said, listen, I saw these 2 things, these 2 glass globes, and I was close enough to I could throw a ball and hit them, but I told them I was close enough to see everything and what it looked like and what these glass globes look like. And I said, nobody's ever described it that way. And I said, it has to be part of their gravity mechanisms that are at work. And they use those globes as a swirling power, situation to, I guess, to thrust their big craft. But this craft was flying solo and slow. It was only going about 35 miles an hour. And no craft that we have that big could stay aloft going at that slow rate of speed and that huge. You have to have speed to get aloft and get going, because we have our jets that they have to really power up when they take off. Yeah. So that's what I mean. It's not one of ours. I've had a guy tell me, well, the TR3 looks like one of those triangles. That's probably what you saw. I said, no. I said a TR3 would not be flying over neighborhoods. The military doesn't fly over neighborhoods, especially if it's a new experimental type craft. They wouldn't do that. They don't fly over. They fly over areas where it's more deserted. They may fly over certain towns or some communities, but they're not going to fly that low around neighborhoods and risk having some event that happened, a crash or whatever. So no, it wasn't the military. This wasn't. We don't have something this thing stretched about 8 or 9 house lots from wingtip, back wingtip to back wingtip in the triangle shape. It covered about 8 or 9 house lots, so it was huge.
Yeah. You didn't get any pictures though.
No. Here was the thing, David. I just got back from a UFO conference in April, and 9th when I saw this triangle craft, and I just got back from a UFO conference, and I was just settling in, got unpacked, and I was outside talking to my brother, and it's a brother that since has passed a couple of years ago, but I was talking to him, and I saw these lights, and I had to kind of hang up, and I said, I'll tell you later what I see. Yeah, it's a coincidence that why have I seen 5 craft, and why is it that they fly over me, and why is it that I ran into strange people? A lot of people talk about these men in black, but I've heard some stories. Just interviewed a guy here a while back that he was last week exactly. He was taking pictures in Phoenix, and he was taking pictures of things, and he saw this globe that come up, and it swirled around, it come towards him, and he said it come right at him real fast, and he fell backwards because he thought it was going to hit his face, and it got real close to his face, and he said this thing kind of disappeared. He has videotape of it, but when he looked out the parking garages, which was wide open, he was on the 3rd floor of the parking garage, and he looked out and he saw 2 guys dressed in jeans and t-shirts, and he said they looked like sparkling brand new clothes, like they just bought them. And I said, oh, you're talking about the men in black now, or dressing down? He said, yes. And he said, these people have followed me several times. He's had experiences with a big glowing orb in his house, and he's had experiences where he felt that he was abducted. So they were tracking him, and he's got videos, and he's got pictures of UFOs, and he hasn't sent those to me yet, but I'm hoping to get those. Yeah. But Yeah, so they're following him because they think maybe he might have seen or know something, or he's videotaped something that they don't want him to videotape.
Yeah. It could be they're blending in a bit with today's fashions and things, because Men in Black would stand out quite a lot, wouldn't they?
Right, yeah, and especially with all the movies out and and all the ancient alien shows and the shows that have come around it or whatever, but they've talked about the Men in Black dressed in Men in Black. Now, my neighbors, I don't know if I got to this too, this is kind of like supporting facts. My neighbor, about 1:30 in the morning, he got up to take some medication. He looked out his bathroom, window in which kind of he could see my backyard. We were very close, and he looks and he saw this cone-shaped light, a very concentrated white light, he said, beam down in my backyard. And he stood there for 5 minutes, he said, in amazement to see what was going to happen. He didn't see anything, but he did not talk to me about it until 2 months later. And he told me, he said, Dave, I didn't want to tell you the story because I didn't want you to be afraid or scared. I said, I've seen a lot already. And I said, that was probably part of what happened to me in some of my abductions. Mm-hmm. And the lady and the gentleman, they were married, they were next to me on the other side of me, also saw lights, heard vibrations and sounds, and they were so afraid to look out their back deck to see what was going on. They hid under their beds. That's how afraid they were. I told them, I said, why didn't you take a look out just to see what it was? And I told this gal, she said, I want to see a UFO. I said, you will. I said, if you hang out with me, I said, you'll probably see one. And of course, hang out their neighbors, and we talked and stuff a lot. But those are things that happen around me that I didn't see, other people have seen. And talk about Men in Black. They did see a man in black standing in the field just right outside my fence line of my yard. And it was my brother-in-law and my sister. They were walking out of their house, and they lived 4 houses down to the east, and my mom lived about 4 houses down to the west. So we kind of controlled the neighborhood, being all Emmonses. But they walked out, and they saw a man in black with a long trench coat with a black hat just standing there, and the wind was kind of blowing because a storm was brewing up. And my brother-in-law, he's a strict non-believer. I mean, he just laughed, but he saw something in the woods one time that scared him, but so he was more of a believer, but he was still a skeptic when he saw this man in black, and my sister saw it. They said they stood there a couple minutes and watched, and the guy didn't move, and my mom come out because she was supposed to meet up with him and go, because she come out on the porch and she saw it at her angle. She saw that man in black with a long trench coat blowing. And so 3 of them saw this. And my brother-in-law told me, he said, you know me, Dave, he said, I don't believe in this stuff, but he said, I will tell you, I saw exactly what they're talking about. He said it was a tall man in black with a long black trench and a black hat. And I said, well, thanks for telling me that. So there were people that have seen things with activity around my house. So that's what I mean, that things happen to prove to me that these things are really going on. Yeah, sure. Well, you must put those books out, David. There's some fascinating stories that you've told here. Is that about it, kind of thing, or you've still got more to tell us about? Oh, I haven't gotten into, the other night I got into some other, detailed things. I can look at my ledger, but there's been things that went on. I'll go into the abduction, the one abduction that was huge. What happened was, this was in 2011. This was just before the triangle thing. This was in February of 2011. I was at my computer, and it was a real sunny day. And of course, we've been having a little bit warmer winters here. It was a real sunny day, and I was sitting there in my computer. I was doing something, writing maybe something in my ledger. And then I got tired, and I was kind of like told to go and lay down. So I went and I laid down the rest of my back, and I put my head in my left hand just to hold it up, and my hand was leaning against the headboard. And as I was looking out that door, I heard a lot of crackling and popping in behind me. It was static electricity to the extreme, and it was like stomping on, boxes of crispy crackers and making them crunch. But I heard that, and I started turning around to it, and all of a sudden it hit me in the right shoulder, and I was froze. And I could move a little bit still, and then I tried to turn again, and it hit me again, and I was really stiff. my whole body was out, except for my eyes. I can see out the door. I can roll my eyes around to that door and around the door, and I had my hand up, and I felt that I could move my fingers in my hand. And I heard my sister's voice, and this is where the paranormal comes in. And my sister passed 4 years before this event. And she said, Dave, come on, you can do it. Yeah, you can do it. And I said, do what, sissy? That was her name, I called her. And she said, you can do it, come on. I said, you come to the door where I can see you. I said, I can't move. I said, but come to the door where I can see you. She said, I can't do that. So that conversation ended, and then there was a little hand that was placed in my fingers, a baby's hand, and I pulled down on the fingers, and then I pulled down on the palm, and I thought, oh, this is a real baby. What does this mean? What am I being told? I was thinking, because I still had my intellect, I was still able to think, I was still able to see just in one direction, but I still was thinking and what was going on. And I felt the baby's hand, and then I felt something really heavy set next to me on the bed. And it was kind of like, I said, uh-oh, what is this? And it was right next to my hip area. And I think that was a little bit much for me. I had enough. And then I screamed out, God help me. About 5 or 6 seconds later, it was gone. I was able to move. I jumped out of the bed, walked up and down the hallway just to make sure my body was working. And I called up a scientific friend of mine. She was a biologist, and she worked at a hospital in biology and everything. So I talked to her. She was an investigator, and she told me she had a case in Missouri that the same thing kind of happened with the electricity and the static electricity being involved in the abduction situation. But then I talked to Dr. David Jacobs, had a chance to meet him. And this was, must have been 2011, and went down and saw him. And, he told me, he kind of smiled and kind of chuckled. And I said, you don't believe me? He goes, no, it's not that. He said, what that was all about, that they were bringing you back. He said, you weren't leaving. They brought you back, and they were already done. I said, oh no. He said, yeah. He said, the electricity you felt, that they froze you in bed and everything, they were bringing you back. And I said, I've had several of those, electrocuted type feelings. And he said, well, you've been abducted several times. Every time that happened to you, then you must understand that they were bringing you back. They weren't taking you. I said, wow. Yeah. So you learn something from all this, and also the people that I talked to, I learned, different things about abductions, and they talk about things that happen to them, and I can come out and I say, wow, that happened to me too.
Yeah, so you got similar occurrences. That's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that, David, when they do that. When I'm able to interview people, I just did that with a guy, what was it? It was Thursday night. We had a great interview. And he was abducted and had a lot of pictures and things like I told you, but he brought up things to me, like these things were moving in his house, and I said, well, they can be invisible, and then he said something about his throat being raw, and he said the doctors couldn't find any reason for it, and I said, well, they scoped you, and he said, my goodness, he said I've talked to about 10 different people that's supposed to be experts. They never did say that. I said, there's a possibility you could have been scoped. And he said that his right ear, they heard his right ear, and he said he saw this little gray thing at the end of his bed, and the light was retracting. It was going back to him. Now, I asked him if he saw the apparatus that they used. He said, no, it looked like it come right out of his hand. And since these little gray guys are, they're biomechanical, maybe they have those, I guess, tractor beams or those rays that come out of their hand instead of some apparatus. And that leaves less likely for people to find out, what they're made out of, if they find anything left behind.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. But no, I went on from that, and I had a buddy, and I just, right after that, I have a lot of, I usually go by secondary facts, David. If something happens, I have to wait for, it's kind of like a boomerang situation. I have the throwing of the boomerang, in which is the first original fact. I saw a UFO, I lost time, and then I'm waiting for the boomerang to come back and give me some kind of a sign. Since I was a journalist, I kept, ledgers, I kept notes, and I wait for these secondary facts. And the body that sat beside me during that abduction, my buddy stayed with me. He stayed in another room overnight. He lived in northern Illinois. I lived in southern. And he stayed with me because he wanted to go out on the range with me. And he wanted to shoot my John Wayne gun, the Winchester 44. Yeah, he just wanted to shoot that.
Well, I'd like to too, but yeah.
Yeah. And he did fire it, and he bruised his shoulder, and I said, "Oh, you're Navy, I could see." I said, you're supposed to snug that gun up to your shoulder. I said, you can't let it hurt you like that. So yeah, so that's what he stayed for, just for that. And he said, would you take pictures? I said, yeah. So I did all that, but 2 months later, here again is a friend, somebody I know, a neighbor, a friend, or a relative. My relatives usually tell me pretty quick. They tell me real quick if they see anything weird or whatever. But this buddy of mine waited a couple of months, and we were talking on the phone, and he said, "Dave, I want to tell you something. I don't want you to be afraid." And I said, "Go ahead." I know. He said, "Well, when I stayed with you," he said, "I didn't have a very good night." I said, "Well, I'm sorry. Was the bed bad?" He said, "No, it wasn't that." And he said, "I've been a ghost hunter. You know that in my past." He said, "I've done a lot of research on ghosts." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, that night I stayed," he said, "something brushed up against his feet and his leg." He said 2 or 3 times that night. And he said it was heavy. It was solid. And he said it was not a ghost. And I told him, I said, "Well, you know my history here, Dave." His name was Dave too. A lot of Daves, right?
Yeah, a lot of Daves around.
Yeah, right.
It's a good name. My wife says it's a good name. So
yeah, and everything happens to us Daves. So he told me about that, and I said, Dave, I said, I know what it is. I said I felt it too. Actually felt something grab my foot and pulled my foot down, but I think what they were doing were waking me up from an abduction, and they wanted to wake me up to make sure that I was okay. So this is where I think the ETs, or some of the ETs, are taking extra precaution not to hurt us. It's just like Travis Walton. He told I went to 3 of his talks, and I met him at his home personally, so I know a little bit about his story. He said he thinks the reason why they pulled him on board the ship is when he was hit with that tractor beam or that laser beam. He said it felt like he was just electrocuted, and his whole chest is hurt, and he fell back, and I guess he went out. He didn't have time to think about dying, but apparently they thought he was dead, so they picked him up, took him in the ship, and they brought him back to life. That's what Travis Walton was saying. So actually they can use a little bit too much energy or electrical energy to work with us humans. But yeah, I've heard these stories from people around me, and I've heard, like the neighbors. So this kind of concludes the fact, the secondary fact that there is something solid that was in my house, and I believe it's ET related. So this is why he felt what he felt. But I guess after that, things started slowing down a little bit. I had paranormal activity. I had shoes put on top of shoes, just balanced, just right. And I thought, I don't do that. I woke up and I saw one of my shoes perfectly balanced. And I tried to get it balanced and take it off, put it back, and I couldn't do it. It was kind of hard to balance it. So they left a sign for me.
Yeah, like a sign. Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah. And then other paranormal activity happened. Like I had an amber necklace, and I had it on me. I think that one night in bed. It was a Thursday night, and the next morning, I felt that it was gone. So I looked around in my bed, took the sheets off, looked in the pillow, took the pillow apart, looked under the bed, everywhere for this amber, object, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I thought, oh no, it's missing. I said, where could it have gone? I know I had it on when I went to bed. It was kind of a spiritual thing, that I was into during all this activity with the UFOs. I tried to delve into more spiritual stuff because I have to do that to protect from any negative energy.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's connected anyway, Dave.
Yeah. But one morning, Saturday morning, after that I didn't pay any more attention to it. Saturday morning I got up and I even, splashed my face, brushed my teeth, and then I started brushing my hair, and when I did, the amber amulet fell down on the floor. I said, you gotta be kidding me. It was put in my hair. And for 2 days, I combed my hair and brushed my hair several times during that time, but this time it just fell out. Wow. So something from another dimension, we're talking dimensional now, and a lot of people are saying that. I saw somebody, it was on Fox News with Tucker Carlson, and he was a UFO expert. I missed that show. I was doing an interview with this one guy out of Phoenix that Thursday night, but he was saying that ETs are interdimensional. He said a lot of them come through dimensional channels. And I thought, yes, they do. Because this is how they abduct you, how they come in, and they might take you to their dimension. And I've had regressed dreams that were very vivid from these abductions that I had. I get bits and pieces. I haven't had anything lately. I hear noises every once in a while in the house, and my wife will be alerted to it, and she'll tell me, she said, your buddies are back. And so she's a believer. We've been married 7 years.
She's pretty used to it now, then.
Yeah, she is pretty used to it. She's actually, when we're outside in the car, she'll look up and she'll look for UFOs. And then she'll ask me, is that a UFO? I said, no, those are aviation lights. I said, no, that's not a UFO. But she has seen a couple of UFOs at a distance with me. And she saw a triangle kind of come down through the clouds and just shine a little bit. And she said, there's one. And I told her, I said, yeah, you're probably right. I said, something that large just zoomed down from the clouds and then it goes right back up. And I said, yeah, you probably did see one there. But yeah, she said she's seen things happen to me and heard things. And she's also heard my relatives talk about the things that happened to them and to me. But the one that pulled down on my foot, as I was talking a while ago, that hurt. I woke up and I wondered, what happened? What did that? And so I tell you, this took a few years for this to come through as a secondary fact. But just 2 weeks ago, my younger brother, he's special, and he's there with my mom. He said that somebody yanked down on his foot really hard, and I said, oh no. I said that happened to me. That's the same thing. So. It goes through the family. It's actually activity that they talk about the family DNA that they're interested in following that chain.
Oh. Wow. Well, I just don't know what to say. That's really strange.
Yeah. Yeah. And my mom talks about seeing long, tall, thin black figures walk into her hallway and into her room.
So she said, are you expecting more things to happen with your brother then, in that respect?
I don't know. I'm keeping track of what happens with my family. I know a couple of my brothers have seen the large triangle craft, and one saw one up close. So he just saw that. It was last year that he saw that. So they tell me, they keep me abreast of things that happen. And so yeah, in the family, what happens? They can see UFOs. Apparently, their DNA is what they've been following. A lot of theories on why they follow certain people and why they pick certain people. There's something that's called enlightenment. I guess the term enlightenment, I guess in the Bible means that somebody knows of their own spirit. They know of their own soul. They act out the Christ ways of life. Well, enlightenment actually in a scientific, ufology way is they're saying that enlightenment means that they have charged your DNA with energy, and they have either had an implant that rebooted your DNA, and when a hybrid or an alien they're masking themselves or they're being shapeshifters, when they see you, they know you've had something to do with aliens because of your frequency. They can read your frequency. You've heard of auras. A lot of people can read auras. Yeah. So this is part of it. It's part of the energy. And these, I talked to a guy that he was back in the Air Force in the 60s, and he was working at White Sands, New Mexico, and he was off base, and they was having a party somewhere. And he stayed at his apartment there in town. And he went in the party one night, and he said there was a gorgeous woman, really. And he's tall, and he said, I'm slender and tall. And he said, I'm not a handsome guy. But she come over to him, and he asked her, he says, why did you sit down and start talking to me? And she said, see that guy there, the guy that was with you? He said, yeah. She said, he's got a black aura. And he said, see this guy here? He's got a yellow aura. And she said, yours is green. She said, that's why I chose you. And so he kind of figured she was kind of strange. And I guess a shapeshifter, or not a hybrid maybe, but a shapeshifter. And she told him that she'd go back to his room. But she said she was going to be there a little later. So he said about 1 o'clock in the morning, here she comes. She knocks at the door, and she comes in, and she almost drags him to the bed and rapes him. And he said they had sex, and he said it was wonderful for about 20 minutes, and then she put her clothes back on, and then she said goodbye, and she took off. And he thought, and he felt that something was very, very strange about this woman and about what happened to him. So that almost happened to me if I would have taken this one gal up in the nightclub where I was booking my band back in 2012. I may have talked about that story, but it was the same thing. A young woman, about 25, dressed really nice. She was with a group of other girls, and she was dancing to a Michael Jackson tune, and she was swirling around the bar stools and stuff, and then she kept looking at me. And then she was dancing. She must have been she acted like a professional dancer. And she was looking directly at me. And I had two younger brothers, and they're quite a bit younger than me. And they were, and they're better looking when you're younger. So I thought, why did she pick on me and not these two? And she put her hands out to me across the table. And I thought, why is she doing that? So I didn't take her up on it, and I didn't follow up. I mean, I'm an older guy, and she's a younger woman, so I just kind of, okay, yeah. So about 2 or 3 weeks later, my brother and I went back to complete the contract with the nightclub, and she was sitting there about a stool over from me, and she was in plain clothes. She was in denims and a top, somewhat of a woman's t-shirt top type thing, and she was just sitting there, and I looked at my brother and I said, hey, is she the same girl that's kind of dressed down now? And he said, yeah, looks like it. I looked at her, and she didn't turn her head or nothing. She turned her eyeballs actually moved towards me, and she had a green slant in her eyes. And I thought, ooh, chills went up down my spine. I said, she has to be maybe reptilian. So reptilians actually shapeshift and can do things and work their way in with people, but usually reptilians are usually up to something. Yeah. They're wanting something human or something. I had guys even tell me, well, you're lucky that you didn't bite on that chance, and because she probably would have ate you alive that night. Okay.
Yeah, I've heard quite a lot of stories about reptilians.
Yeah, but we don't know for sure. You know, I know the reptilians are in control down here underground on Earth, and they actually have something to do with our governments.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, but no, I've had quite a bit of things that were strange. There's also you've heard of I guess doppelganger and a Verdog a verdog is a Swedish name, Netherlands name for something makes a copy of somebody else. Well, I think they've been doing that too. And there was a story that I had. It's not a story, it's an event. It was when I was coming back to Sedona, and I was at Trinity site where they set off the first nuclear bomb there in New Mexico. And I was at the Smoky Bear hometown, and I stopped and got a couple of things, and I talked to these women, and they weren't very talkative. So I left and went on this nice, clean highway. It's really nice. And there's no boulders, no rocks close by. They were at a distance. As I was driving on the passenger side, there's a big thump. I mean, a huge thump. I thought the glass was going to break. And I looked, and I slowed down to make sure the glass wasn't broke, and it wasn't. It was just a huge thump. And then I felt in the air in the car, I felt like my hairs on my arm and my back, my neck were kind of standing up. And I felt some kind of energy, some kind of tingling. And for 5 minutes that went on. I kept driving and thinking about it. And then there was another big thump. It went back out the window. I kind of thought whatever was there went back out the window in a thump. And it didn't break the glass. And I was heading through New Mexico, and I went to, I went to, I'm trying to think of the towns that I went through, but I can't remember a lot of the small towns. But I'd worked my way through New Mexico, and then I went to Texas. I ended up at this motel. It was a pretty nice, motel. And I talked to the gal behind the counter for a little while. She said her parents saw UFOs. I said, yeah, okay, fine. So I went to eat something really quick. Then I went to bed at 10:30. I hurt my leg. I fell and scratched my leg on gravel, so I kind of treated it that night. But I was really, I was really tired. I laid down, went to sleep at 10:30. The next morning I got up at 9 and I went to check out. Same gal was there. She just doubled back because I was short-handed. And I said, how was your night? And she gives me a dirty look. And she said, you know how my night was. I said, well, no, I don't. How was it? I mean, you're back again. Are you tired? She goes, no. She said, I saw you last night. I said, yeah, I was here at 10:30 when I walked back out, and I went to my room before 10:30. I said, I fell asleep at 10:30. And she said, no, you didn't. I said, yes, I did. She said, I saw you at Walmart, or after I got off work, and she said, you had the same clothes, and she said, it was you. She said, I know it was you. She pointed her finger at me. She said, don't lie to me. I said, I'm not lying to you. I said, I wasn't there. It wasn't me. I wouldn't stalk her anyway. So, to tell you the truth, so I didn't want to, I wanted to tell the manager about her because it got on my nerves because, she was trying to say that I was there, stalking her. And I didn't like that. That's something I would never do. I'm not that kind of a person. So I walked out to my car and I thought, I just better get out of here and don't say nothing because, if it's a man against the woman's going to win. I'm not sexist, but that's the truth in a lot of ways. And especially now, it's the Me Too thing. The guy doesn't really have a chance. I'm out of town. Nobody knows me in San Antonio. So yeah. I wouldn't have had a chance, for that. So I just left, got out of town.
You just don't want that trouble anyway, do you? It's just.
Yeah. I got home and I took my car to my dealership because I had that hail damage that I might have talked about earlier from coming from Sedona, and I had the hail damage. I took my car in and I just got there, sat down on the bench, and there was a guy who walked past me, and he looked like, a lawyer type or a doctor type, and he was dressed really nice, and he kind of looked at me and said, you've been here for a while. He said, and he looked at his watch. He said, you've been here 2 hours. I said, no, sir. I just sat down. I've only been here about 2 minutes. And I said, I just give the keys to the service manager to take a look at my car. I said, just now he just walked away. I said, I've only been here 2 minutes. He said, no, I don't want to get into descriptions of you. I'm not going to do that. But he said, it was you. Oh, God. And he said, I know it was you. And he said, you're lying. I said, no, sir. So I said, I don't want to go there. So he just walks away, man. He thought I was lying to him. So there was two situations within 2 days of each other. 3 days of each other probably, that these people saw me, and I was there before I was there. So I thought to myself, that thump in the window in New Mexico and the thump that went out might have been something that copied me in a holographic manner and made a Verdog out of me, a duplicate of me. And ETs can do that.
Putting you where you were going to be.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so they can make a duplicate of you. A lot of people don't talk about that, but that was a situation I got into, that I know that it was strange. I couldn't prove otherwise, and the follow-up facts were there. So I don't know. It's up to people if other people's had that type of situation where, I know back in the 1700s, 1800s, in Sweden and in Europe, you might be familiar with the Verdog, or a doppelganger type effect.
Well, I've heard of the doppelganger, but I've not heard the other term before. Well, I've not heard any real stories about it on this show anyway, previously to what you've been talking about.
Yeah. Like I said, a little bit of everything's happened to me, surrounding these events and meeting, these types of UFOs and being close to it and getting implants. I know I got more implants. There's one on my thumb that moves around. The doctor asked me, he said, does it bother you? I said, no, it does get in the way. And he felt it. He said, yeah, I can feel it. It's right there in my thumb joint. So he didn't feel like he should, as long as it doesn't bother me, he won't take it out. But I know there has to be other implants in me because I know they're still tracking me.
Yeah.
You ever heard of apports, David?
Yes, yeah, apports, yeah. I think I've experienced it actually, with like a stone appearing from somewhere.
Did you find that stone in a place it wasn't supposed to be?
Yeah, we were in a place in Nottingham. You may have heard of Malcolm Robinson, the ufologist. He's a friend of mine.
Right.
We were doing a paranormal investigation in Nottingham, the Halls of Justice, and a stone landed on the steps behind us, and we couldn't see it because it was in the dark. But Malcolm found it eventually. When he picked it up, it was warm. So,
wow.
And it was a very smooth stone, and it shouldn't have been there. It was out of place completely. I mean, we can only assume it was that stone that cracked on the steps behind us. I mean, we didn't see it, but we heard it, and that's all we could find. Or Malcolm found it. So we have had. I have experienced a porch. Yeah, Malcolm seems to think it was an apport because of the heating it was holding.
Right. The apports. I talked to Grant Cameron and I sent him some pictures of some of my apports. You have the white feathers, of course, and I was at my brother's funeral. He was only 62 when he died. Kind of sad. He was a family guy, and he was a really, funny, outgoing guy, and he played music in our brother's band. And, we miss him as a musician brother and also a real brother. But
it's young to go, isn't it?
Yeah, and when I was at his funeral, I was sitting there with his daughter, my niece, and I looked down at my foot, and I didn't see this before I walked in there. And I looked down at my foot, my left foot, and there was a little white feather. And I picked it up, and I said, that's a sign from my brother that, that he's here with us, and he's, he communicated with me with this white feather. I took this white feather and I give it to my niece. I said, here, keep this. This is from your dad. And there wasn't any feathers around anywhere else. Nobody was wearing, it wasn't really cold that day. A lot of people weren't wearing any feather jackets. Those are going out of style anyway. But I found a stone in my car. I took a quarter off the floor one day, and then the next day I went in, there's a pretty little stone, a real pretty little thing, and I took pictures of it, and I still got it. But it was something that just wasn't supposed to be there. And then the biggest apport story that I had, and I was talking to Grant Cameron and giving pictures of, were these little discs. These are little plastic discs. They seem to be plastic. They feel like plastic, and you can, bend them, and they're malleable like plastic. But the first disc I got was in Godfrey, Illinois. I lived there. It was just before I got married, and my wife wasn't with me at that time, but I was in the bathroom, I guess, doing my thing, whatever. And when I looked down, there was a gray-like little round disc sitting at my feet where I could see it. They always put these things exactly where you can see them. So I picked it up and looked at it, and I said, wow, that's weird. I said, maybe it's from a piece of clothing or some kind of some kind of a price tag type situation. So I put it on my counter top of the dresser, put it in a little jar, and I said, well, I'll just keep it for keepsake and find out where it come from. But I looked around the house. There was nothing that I had that would match that. It seemed like some kind of a bingo chip, but it was too small to be a bingo chip because I checked those on the internet, and they were a little bit bigger than these little small discs that I got. They were 5/8 inch in diameter and about 1/16 of an inch thick, maybe a little less. But I found that I think that was in July of 2012. And then I got married, and we moved into my house that I had, and I found another one when I was at the side of the bed, and I was putting my clothes on, and I looked down, and there was a egg-colored disc, same size, same exact size. I picked it up, and I said, okay, there's something to this. There's something going on. And I showed the wife, and she says, oh, well, I don't know. Maybe those are, angels talking to you. And I said, well, I hope they're angels. And so I put this one next to the other one, and I started keeping them like that. And then we went to Alaska, and my wife had a job in Alaska. So we was at Fairbanks, and we were coming out of the commissary. She worked on the military base for a couple of years, subcontracted, and, we was coming out of the commissary, and there was a red disc that was hardened down into the snow, but it wasn't driven over. It must have just been freshly put there. It was in the walkway for me to get to my car, and since it was red, they know I would see it. And my wife actually saw it at the same time I did, and she picked it up, and she goes, that's one of those discs. And I looked at it, and I said, yep, it is. Same size, everything. So I took it, put it with the rest of them. But it was just right after that I went to a Rotary meeting with our landlord, who was leasing a house there for a couple of years. You don't want to buy if you're not going to stay in the Fairbanks. So we leased the house, but the guy was a professor. He was a doctor of oceanic studies, that type of thing, and he did some studies in the Arctic, and he worked with the University of Alaska. Very smart guy. And we went to lunch a couple of times, and then he took me to a Rotary meeting where all these scientists were together, and they were talking, about their schedules and about how the school was going and what part they're going to be doing or whatever. But I sat there and listened, had lunch. I went to the bathroom and come back, and I saw a guy that was kind of heavy set. He had sparkling blue eyes, and he looked at me kind of strange. And I thought, oh, that kind, I notice different people or strange people. That's another talent that I've gotten. I can read their energy. So there's certain energy about him. So when I got home, I changed clothes, and when I reached in my pocket to take my keys and everything out of my pocket, I had something was sticking in my finger, and I pulled it out, and there was another disc. This one was in my pocket. I sat down on the edge of the bed, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, I had chills. It was kind of like it finally hit me. This is the fourth one I got, and these were in two different locations. And I got the disc before I met my wife. So it wasn't my wife, and I lived by myself before I married her. So it wasn't my wife, because I've had a disc or two that happened to me before she married me. So that's out of the question. Somebody who lives with you, playing games with you, but that wasn't her. She didn't do it. So this was something that I don't know how to explain it. And I talked to Grant about it on an interview, and we talked about the people that might have had these types of things, what they really mean. The different colors might mean something. The shapes of it, that little shapes could mean it could be a young person. But what they're telling me is they can follow me from Illinois to Fairbanks, Alaska is about 4,800 miles. Yeah. So they just demonstrated that they can follow you anywhere that you go.
Yeah, some kind of sign. Yeah, amazing.
Right.
Well,
yeah,
I'll tell you what, Dave. You've been an amazing guest. You've told us some amazing stories, fascinating stories, and I think we're going to have to leave it there because we're sort of. I don't know, we're probably about 2 hours now. So, but
okay.
It's been fantastic. You've been a fantastic guest for your first show in the new year, as we've said. Well, Matt, hopefully you'll come back again sometime and give us some more stories. Well, not stories, stories, your experiences, I should say. Cause it's
right. Let's keep in touch. David.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
I've been fascinated by you, Dave, and I'm very pleased to have got you onto my first show. I'm quite honoured actually, and thank you for agreeing to come on.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
But anyway, I wish you and your family a happy New Year. As I say, this is the first show of the new year. I'll send you the link and everything when it goes out. And I wish you great success. And please keep in touch with me if any more strange experiences come up.
Sure. I will. I'll call you and let you know. But yeah, I will keep up with that. And I love doing this interview in the UK. I know that there's a lot of people in the UK that are believers, and I know that they see a lot of things just like we do, and so it's a pleasure for me to talk to your audience.
Yeah, I'm sure people will find this show very interesting. It's been very good. But anyway, thank you, Dave, again, and goodbye to you, and hopefully speak to you again soon.
Okay.
Right,
good night.
Take care of yourself. Happy New Year. Bye, Dave.
You
Bye,
too.
Dave. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Paranormal Dimensions. I'm David Young, and this is the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Please tune in again next week. Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.